Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! As raucous laughter filled the air of the tiny apartment, Orlando watched the dice scatter, their numbers sealing his fate. He felt a surge of panic as his gaze fell upon the cruel arrangement they formed. Meanwhile, his roommates exploded with triumphant joy around him.
No way out now.
Marcus's infectious laugh threatened to topple his drink.
Spring Parade is yours to conquer. In drag.
With a nervous habit, Orlando twirled his fingers through the strands of his brown hair, discomfort welling up inside him.
Guys,
There has to be something else.
A bet's a bet,
Chris chimed in, his expression smug as he collected the dice.
You agreed to the terms. The loser dresses as a woman for the parade. No backing out now.
The apartment fell silent as all eyes turned to Orlando. He swallowed hard, nodding reluctantly.
Fine, but nothing too outrageous.
3 days later, Orlando found himself standing in his sister Natalie's bedroom, eyeing the red cocktail dress she held up with growing dread.
This is ridiculous,
he muttered, crossing his arms over his chest.
Can't you find something less attention-grabbing?
Natalie raised an eyebrow, the satin material of the dress catching the light as she shook it slightly. This is perfect. The color will complement your complexion, and it's modest enough that you won't feel completely exposed. She tossed the dress onto the bed and rummaged through her closet again. Plus, I have the perfect shoes to match. Orlando groaned as she produced a pair of black stiletto heels that looked more like instruments of torture than footwear.
I can't walk in those.
You'll learn, Natalie replied with a shrug. Now strip down. We have a lot of work to do. 2 hours later, Orlando barely recognized the person staring back from the full-length mirror. The red dress hugged a body that seemed somehow curvier than his own, created through clever padding and a waist cincher that made it difficult to breathe deeply. His legs, freshly shaved and glistening with lotion, extended from the hem of the dress, elongated by the precarious black stilettos strapped to his feet. But it was his face that truly stunned him. Natalie had worked magic with her makeup collection, contouring his features to appear softer, more feminine. His eyes looked larger, framed by false lashes and smoky eyeshadow. His lips, painted a deep red to match the dress, seemed fuller than before. The final touch had been the wig, cascading auburn waves that fell past his shoulders, the color catching the light with hints of copper and gold.
Holy shit,
he whispered, tilting his head slightly as the stranger in the mirror mimicked his movement. Natalie appeared behind him, grinning proudly at her handiwork. You look amazing! Seriously, Orlando, you're going to turn heads!
That's what I'm afraid of,
he muttered, taking an unsteady step in the heels.
And how am I supposed to walk in these all day?
Practice, she replied, guiding him around the room. Small steps, and you need a name for today. You can't be Orlando in that outfit. He thought for a moment, looking down at the red dress.
Rose,
he said finally.
Might as well lean into the whole flower theme.
The morning of the spring parade dawned bright and clear. Orlando, now Rose for the day, clutched Natalie's arm as they made their way downtown, each step in the stilettos a precarious balancing act. Stand up straight, Natalie instructed, adjusting the auburn wig. Confidence is key. No one will question you if you act like you belong. Rose nodded, straightening her posture despite the unfamiliar pull of the waist cincher. The red dress felt cool against her skin, the material shifting with each movement. Somewhere between the apartment and the bustling parade route, Orlando had mentally shifted to thinking of himself as Rose. It seemed easier to embrace the character fully than to fight it.
"Your roommates are meeting us at Cedar Street," Natalie said, guiding Rose through the growing crowds. "Try not to fall and break an ankle before they see their handiwork." Rose rolled her eyes, but concentrated on walking more smoothly. "They're going to laugh themselves sick."
"Maybe," Natalie conceded. "Or maybe they'll be surprised at how good you look." The parade route was already filling with spectators. Floats lined up along side streets, performers in colorful costumes stretching and preparing. Rose felt increasingly self-conscious as they wove through the crowd, certain that everyone could tell she wasn't really a woman.
"Excuse me,"
a voice called from behind them. Rose tensed, turning slowly to face a middle-aged woman with a clipboard. "Are you with the Garden Society float? The one with the spring flowers theme?" Rose blinked in surprise. "No,
Your dress is perfect for our color scheme,"
the woman continued, eyeing the red cocktail dress appreciatively. "We're short a few performers if you'd be interested in joining us. It's just some simple choreography on the float." Before Rose could respond, Natalie jumped in. "She'd love to! Wouldn't you, Rose? She's a wonderful dancer!" The woman beamed. "Fantastic! I'm Elaine! The float is just down that way, the one with all the giant paper flowers. Our choreographer will show you the routine. It's very simple." Rose shot Natalie a panicked look, but her sister merely grinned and gave her a gentle push. "Go on. Your friends wanted you to participate in the parade, right? Now you'll be right in the middle of it." Finding herself unable to form a coherent objection, Rose followed Elaine through the crowd, concentrating on keeping her balance in the stilettos. The Garden Society float came into view, a massive platform covered in oversized tissue paper flowers in vibrant spring colors. Several women in dresses of various hues were already on board, practicing a simple dance routine. "Everyone, this is Rose!" Elaine announced. "She's joining us today. Meredith, can you show her the steps?" A petite blonde in a yellow dress stepped forward, smiling warmly. "Of course! It's pretty straightforward. Come on up and I'll walk you through it." Rose hesitated, eyeing the steps leading up to the float. Climbing in heels seemed like a recipe for disaster. "Need a hand?" A tall man in the parade staff uniform appeared at her side, offering his arm for support. "Thanks," Rose murmured, accepting his help and carefully ascending to the float's platform. His casual chivalry caught her off guard. No one had ever offered to help Orlando up steps before. For the next 20 minutes, Meredith patiently taught Rose the simple choreography. To her surprise, Rose found the movements came naturally once she adjusted to the heels. The other women on the float were friendly and welcoming, complimenting her dress and asking where she'd gotten her auburn wig. "It looks so natural," one woman in a blue dress remarked, studying Rose's hair. "The color is gorgeous with your complexion." "Thanks," Rose replied, still startled each time someone addressed her without a hint of suspicion. "My sister helped me style it." By the time the parade was ready to begin, Rose had nearly forgotten her nervousness. The music started, the float lurched forward, and suddenly they were moving down the main street, surrounded by cheering crowds. "Wave to the people!" Meredith called over the music, demonstrating with an enthusiastic gesture to the spectators. Rose followed suit, falling into rhythm with the other dancers as they performed their routine. The sun warmed her skin, and a light breeze played with the auburn strands of the wig. For the first time since putting on the dress, she felt something unexpected. Joy. Halfway through the parade route, Rose spotted her roommates in the crowd. Marcus's jaw literally dropped when he recognized her, while Chris fumbled with his phone, clearly trying to capture the moment. Rather than feeling embarrassed, Rose felt a surge of confidence. She executed a perfect twirl in the choreography, the red dress flaring out around her legs, and blew them a mocking kiss. The parade lasted over 2 hours, winding through downtown streets lined with enthusiastic spectators. By the end, Rose's feet ached from the stilettos, but she barely noticed. The experience had been exhilarating, dancing on the float, receiving genuine compliments, feeling the satin dress swirl around her legs with each movement. When the parade finally ended at the city park, Rose said goodbye to her new friends from the Garden Society, promising to keep in touch, though knowing she probably wouldn't follow through. As she carefully descended from the float, she spotted Natalie waiting nearby with a knowing smile. "Had fun?" her sister asked as Rose approached. "It was different," Rose admitted, brushing confetti from the red dress. "Not what I expected." Different good or different bad? Rose considered this as they began walking through the park, where parade participants and spectators mingled among food vendors and musical performances. Different good, I think. No one suspected anything. Everyone just saw Rose. "That's because you look amazing," Natalie replied. "The right clothes, makeup, and attitude go a long way." They found Marcus and Chris near a pretzel stand, both grinning widely as Rose approached. "Holy shit, Orlando!" Marcus exclaimed, looking her up and down. "You actually pulled it off. We thought you'd wear some cheap costume and be done with it." "My sister wouldn't let me half-ass it," Rose replied, surprised at how uncomfortable she felt being called Orlando while dressed as Rose. "Figured if I had to do it, might as well do it right." Chris handed her a beer. "Well, consider the bet fully paid. You went above and beyond. Joining a float wasn't part of the deal, though I got some great pictures for posterity." Rose accepted the beer, taking a long sip. "Delete those and I'll buy the next round."
"Not a chance."
Chris laughed, pocketing his phone. "This is premium blackmail material." The afternoon stretched on as they wandered through the festival atmosphere of the park. To Rose's surprise, her roommates treated her almost normally, though with occasional jokes about her appearance. What truly struck her was how others interacted with their group. Men held doors open, offered to take pictures for them, smiled at Rose in ways Orlando had never experienced. As evening approached, the park filled with people waiting for the fireworks display that would close out the spring parade celebration. Rose found herself separated from her group in the crowd, standing alone near a row of cherry trees in full bloom.
"Great dress,"
a voice commented beside her. Rose turned to find a woman about her age, smiling appreciatively. "Red is such a power color." "Thanks," Rose replied, smoothing the satin material self-consciously. "It's actually my first time wearing it." "Well, you're rocking it," the woman said. "I'm Diana, by the way." "Rose," she responded automatically, the name feeling natural on her lips now. "Are you here alone, Rose?" "I got separated from my friends in the crowd," she explained, scanning the sea of faces around them. "We were supposed to watch the fireworks together." Diana gestured to a small hill nearby. "I've got a perfect spot over there if you want to join me. Better view than down here in the crowd." Rose hesitated only briefly before nodding. "That would be nice. Thanks." They made their way to Diana's spot, a patch of grass with a clear view of the sky above the park. Rose carefully arranged the red dress as she sat down, mindful of how Natalie had shown her to move in it. "So, what do you do, Rose?" Diana asked, as they waited for the fireworks to begin. The question caught her off guard. What did Rose do? She wasn't real, but then again, for today, she was. "I'm finishing my degree in business administration," she answered truthfully. "Just one more semester to go." "That's impressive," Diana replied. "I graduated last year with a degree in graphic design. Now I'm working at a small marketing firm downtown." The conversation flowed easily as darkness fell over the park. Rose found herself relaxing, forgetting momentarily about the dress, the wig, the character she was playing. Diana was easy to talk to and seemed genuinely interested in what Rose had to say. When the fireworks finally began, exploding in brilliant colors overhead, Rose felt a strange contentment. The day had been nothing like she'd expected, from the humiliation she'd anticipated to the surprising freedom she'd found. After the display ended, Diana helped Rose to her feet, steadying her as she balanced on the stilettos. "Those shoes look murder on your feet." "They are," Rose admitted with a laugh. "But they complete the outfit." "Beauty is pain, right?" Diana smiled, taking out her phone. "Listen, I enjoyed talking with you. Maybe we could get coffee sometime?" Rose froze, reality crashing back. Diana thought she was making friends with another woman, not a man who'd lost a bet. The deception suddenly felt wrong. I don't live here," Rose lied, feeling her cheeks warm with shame. "I'm just visiting for the parade." Diana's disappointment was visible, but she nodded understandingly. "Too bad. Well, it was nice meeting you, Rose." As Diana walked away, Rose felt a confusing mix of guilt and regret. Then her phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "Where are you? We're by the main entrance." Rose made her way through the dispersing crowd, finding Natalie and her roommates waiting impatiently. "There you are," Natalie called out. "We've been looking everywhere." "Sorry," Rose replied, adjusting the auburn wig that had slightly shifted. "I got caught up watching the fireworks." Marcus checked his watch.
"We're heading to the foundry for drinks. You coming?"
Rose hesitated, suddenly aware of how exhausted she felt. Her feet throbbed in the stilettos, and the waist cincher had been compressing her ribs for hours. "I think I'm going to call it a day, actually." "Seriously?" Chris looked surprised. "The bet included the whole day. You can't bail now." "Leave him alone," Natalie interjected, putting a protective arm around Rose's shoulders. "He fulfilled the bet by participating in the parade. Besides, those shoes have got to be killing him." Rose shot her sister a grateful look. "I just want to get out of this outfit and relax. You guys go ahead." Marcus shrugged. "Your loss. But I gotta say, Orlando, you committed to this way more than I expected. Respect, man." The name Orlando jarred her again. Feeling somehow wrong after a full day as Rose, she forced a smile and said her goodbyes, walking slowly with Natalie back toward her apartment. "You okay?" Natalie asked when they were alone. "You seem quiet." Rose considered the question carefully. "It was a strange day. I didn't expect to enjoy it." Natalie nodded thoughtfully. "The attention? The clothes? What part?" "All of it, I guess," Rose admitted, watching her reflection in a darkened storefront as they passed. The auburn-haired woman looking back seemed like someone she knew intimately, and not at all simultaneously. People treated me differently, better in some ways, and I liked how the dress felt, how I looked in it. There's nothing wrong with that, Natalie said softly. Lots of people enjoy dressing up, playing different roles. But it wasn't just playing a role, Rose insisted, struggling to articulate the confusing feelings. For parts of today, I forgot I was pretending. They walked in silence for a few blocks, the cool night air raising goosebumps on Rose's bare arms. When they reached Natalie's apartment building, Rose hesitated at the entrance. "Can I stay at your place tonight?" she asked quietly. "I don't want to face the guys yet." Natalie's expression softened with understanding. "Of course. Let's get you inside and comfortable." In the privacy of Natalie's bathroom, Rose slowly dismantled the character piece by piece. The stilettos came off first, bringing immediate relief to her aching feet. The wig followed, the auburn waves carefully placed on the stand Natalie provided. The makeup took longer to remove, layers of foundation, contour and color, gradually revealing Orlando's more familiar features. Finally, Natalie helped unzip the red cocktail dress, the satin material sliding over his skin as it fell away. The waist cincher was last, and Orlando took a deep breath as the constriction released, his body returning to its natural shape. But as he stood in Natalie's guest room, dressed in borrowed sweatpants and a t-shirt, something felt off. He caught his reflection in the mirror and paused, studying his face. Without the makeup and wig, he was unmistakably Orlando again, except his eyes held something new, something questioning. "Everything okay?" Natalie asked from the doorway. Orlando turned away from the mirror.
"Yeah, just tired. It's been a long day."
"Get some rest," she said softly. "We can talk more tomorrow if you want." After Natalie left, Orlando lay in the darkness, thinking about the day's events. He couldn't stop remembering how natural it had felt to be Rose, how the auburn hair had framed his face, how the red dress had moved with his body. More than that, he remembered the freedom he'd felt, a liberation from expectations he hadn't realized were constraining him. Just before sleep claimed him, a thought surfaced that both frightened and intrigued him. What if Rose wasn't just a character for a lost bet? What if she was a part of him he'd never acknowledged before? The question followed him into dreams, filled with dancing, fireworks, and a red dress twirling beneath a cascade of auburn hair. 2 weeks passed. Orlando returned to his normal routine, classes, study sessions, hanging out with his roommates. The red dress and auburn wig had been returned to Natalie, the makeup washed away, the character of Rose seemingly packed away with them. But he couldn't stop thinking about that day. His roommates had mostly stopped teasing him about the parade, moving on to new jokes and conversations. Occasionally, one would show someone the photos of Orlando in drag, but even that had lost its novelty. For them, it had been a funny prank, a bet fulfilled, an amusing anecdote to share over beers. For Orlando, it had become much more complicated. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, he found himself standing outside Natalie's apartment, hesitating before knocking. When she opened the door, her surprise quickly shifted to understanding as she took in his conflicted expression. "Come in," she said simply, stepping aside. Once inside, Orlando paced nervously across her living room, struggling to find the right words. Natalie waited patiently, giving him the space to organize his thoughts. "I can't stop thinking about it," he finally blurted out. "About being Rose, about how it felt." Natalie nodded, unsurprised. I wondered if you might feel that way. You seemed so natural that day.
What does that mean?
Orlando stopped pacing, turning to face his sister.
Normal guys don't enjoy dressing up as women, do they?
I don't think there's any normal when it comes to how people express themselves, Natalie replied carefully. Some men enjoy it as performance, some as exploration, some because it represents something deeper about who they are.
Only you can know what it means for you.
Orlando sank onto the couch, running his hands through his short brown hair.
I've been having dreams about it, about being Rose again,
about the auburn hair and the red dress and how people looked at me, saw me.
And how does that make you feel? Confused, he admitted. Scared, but also right somehow, like I discovered something I didn't know was missing. Natalie sat beside him, placing a gentle hand on his arm. You know I'll support you no matter what, right? Whether this is something you want to explore occasionally or if it's something more permanent.
Orlando looked up sharply.
Permanent? You mean like...
I mean, like whatever feels authentic to you, Natalie clarified. There's no rush to figure it all out at once. But if you want to explore being Rose again, even just in private, I'm here to help. The relief that flooded through Orlando was unexpected and overwhelming. He hadn't realized how much tension he'd been carrying these past weeks, how afraid he'd been of his own feelings.
I'd like that, he said quietly. To try being Rose again, just to see.
Natalie squeezed his arm reassuringly.
Then that's what we'll do.
Over the next several months, Orlando began a careful, private exploration. Weekends at Natalie's apartment became opportunities to transform into Rose. First, just for an hour or two, then for entire evenings. Natalie helped accumulate a small wardrobe, including a new red dress that Rose particularly loved, reminiscent of the one from the parade, but more comfortable for everyday wear. The auburn wig became Rose's signature, its warm tones complementing her skin tone perfectly. She practiced walking in heels until the awkwardness faded, learned to apply her own makeup, developed mannerisms that felt natural rather than performed. Through it all, Orlando continued his classes, maintained friendships, and kept Rose separate, a private identity shared only with Natalie. But as spring turned to summer, and summer to fall, the boundaries between Orlando and Rose began to blur. Rose no longer felt like a character Orlando was playing, but rather like another aspect of the same person, perhaps even the more authentic one. The turning point came on a crisp October evening. Rose had spent the day with Natalie, shopping and having lunch at a cafe where no one knew Orlando, wearing a casual outfit, jeans, a soft sweater in a deep forest green, and low-heeled boots, with the auburn hair styled in loose waves. Rose had moved through the world with growing confidence. Back at Natalie's apartment, Rose sat on the couch, auburn hair tucked behind her ears as she examined her freshly painted nails, a subtle mauve that complemented the green sweater.
"Natalie," she said softly, "I think I need to tell you something."
Natalie looked up from her book, waiting patiently.
"I don't think this is just about dressing up anymore," Rose continued. "When I'm like this, I feel like myself in a way I never did before. And when I go back to being Orlando, it feels like I'm putting on a costume, not the other way around."
Natalie closed her book, giving Rose her full attention. "Are you saying you think you might be transgender?" The word hung in the air between them. Rose had been researching, reading forums and articles, trying to understand the feelings that had been growing stronger since that day in the parade. I think so, she whispered, her voice catching. I think I might have been all along, but never had the framework to understand it until I experienced being Rose. Natalie moved to sit beside her, taking Rose's trembling hands in her own. I'm here for you, whatever you need, and I'm so proud of you for having the courage to explore this. I'm scared, Rose admitted. What will people think? My friends? The guys? What about school and jobs and— One step at a time, Natalie interrupted gently. You don't have to figure everything out tonight. We'll take it slowly, find resources, connect with people who've been through similar journeys. Rose nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Thank you for not thinking I'm crazy. You're my sibling, Natalie said firmly. Whether you're my brother or my sister doesn't change how much I love you. The tears spilled over then, running down Rose's cheeks as months of confusion and fear gave way to the relief of acceptance. That night marked the beginning of a new chapter. Not Orlando pretending to be Rose, but Rose acknowledging who she had always been. The transition that followed wasn't easy. There were difficult conversations with friends, some of whom stepped back while others stepped up in surprising ways. There were appointments with therapists and doctors, paperwork for name changes, decisions about hormones and other medical aspects of transition. Rose's roommates reacted with varying degrees of shock and confusion when she finally told them. Marcus needed time to process, maintaining a cautious distance at first. Chris, surprisingly, became a steadfast ally, defending Rose against skepticism and offering practical support as she navigated the university's systems to update her information. Through it all, the auburn hair remained Rose's constant. No longer a wig, but eventually her own hair, grown out and professionally colored to match that first transformation. The red dress from the parade was preserved as a memento, a reminder of the day Rose had first emerged into the world, dancing on a float as confetti rained down around her. 1 year to the day after the spring parade, Rose stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the collar of a new red dress she'd bought for the occasion. Her auburn hair, now grown past her shoulders, caught the light as she turned, examining her reflection from different angles. The person looking back was undeniably Rose, in her eyes, her smile, her presence. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Coming!" she called, slipping on a pair of comfortable black heels, still elegant, but far more practical than those first stilettos. Natalie stood in the hallway, grinning as she took in Rose's appearance. "You look fantastic. Ready for your parade anniversary celebration?" Rose nodded, grabbing her purse and closing the door behind her. "Ready as I'll ever be." They walked arm in arm toward the downtown area, where 1 year ago, Orlando had reluctantly fulfilled a bet and Rose had found herself. The spring parade wouldn't happen until tomorrow, but Rose had wanted to revisit some of the significant spots from that day. As they passed through the park where she'd watched fireworks with Diana, Rose smiled at the memory. "You know what's funny? I told that woman I met during the fireworks that I didn't live here because I was afraid of being discovered. Now I wish I could run into her again, as the real me." "The real you was there that day too," Natalie pointed out. "She just hadn't fully introduced herself yet." Rose squeezed her sister's arm gratefully.
"I suppose you're right."
They continued walking until they reached the spot where the Garden Society float had been parked before the parade. Rose paused, looking down the street where she had danced and waved to spectators, discovering joy in movement and expression. I owe those guys a thank you, she said thoughtfully. If they hadn't made that stupid bet, who knows how long it would have taken me to figure things out. Maybe send them a fruit basket, Natalie suggested with a laugh. From a safe distance. Rose chuckled, shaking her head as auburn strands caught the late afternoon sunlight. I'm thinking more like a card. Thanks for the gender enlightenment. Best lost bet ever. As they turned to continue their walk, Rose caught her reflection in a store window, the red dress bright against the darkened glass, her auburn hair framing a face now softened by months of hormone therapy, her posture confident and natural. The woman looking back was no longer a character created for a day, but a person fully realized and moving forward into a life authentically her own. You know, Rose said softly, for someone who lost a bet, I think I ended up winning something much more important. Natalie smiled, linking her arm with Rose's again. I'd say so. Now come on, we've got a celebration dinner to get to, and I know everyone's excited to toast to 1 year of the real Rose. As they walked away from the parade route, Rose felt a sense of completion. The journey that had begun with reluctance and embarrassment had led to self-discovery and truth. Tomorrow, the spring parade would pass through town again, with new floats and performers. But Rose would watch from the sidelines this time, no longer needing the spectacle to find herself. The woman in the red dress with auburn hair had stepped fully into the world, and she had no intention of ever stepping back.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!